So I've got with us here an orthopedic surgeon all the way from Canada, and we're going to be discussing the differences between the Canadian system and the UK system. And then we're going to figure out which one is better to work in and which one you would potentially work in. So tell us about what you do, your journey so far, where you've worked, and we'll dive in.
Sure. My name is Olumide. Right now, I'm a third-year orthopedic surgery resident in Canada, London, Ontario, not London, UK,
Okay.
at Western University. So I started my journey in Canada doing my undergraduate. So you do 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of medical school, after which you would then start your residency training. My journey is a bit unique in the sense that I did my medical school in Caribbean.
Okay.
So after my undergraduate degree, I was an international student in Canada, and I chose to go outside of the country to do my medical school, and then was fortunate enough to match back into Canada for my residency training. And in Caribbean school, you do 2 years on the Caribbean island, and then you do your clinical rotations in the US.
Oh, wow. So you've got experience in Canada, the Caribbean, and the USA.
You can say that, yes.
Okay. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. So tell me, before we even go back to that, tell me about this matching process, because I've heard about that a bit, but I don't really understand it. So tell us what matching is.
Yeah, so it's a process used in North America. Both the US and Canada use the same process, an algorithm essentially that matches medical students to residency programs. So essentially, you create an application and apply to several different programs. And then based on the interviews you get, we then rank the programs.
Okay.
The programs also rank their applicants or candidates.
And is that based on skills, ability, or your portfolio? Because in the UK, we have a portfolio system where we have to gather research, audits, show commitment to the specialty, and then we get ranked. Is it the same in Canada?
It's similar in a sense. So your application is really kind of well-rounded. So you have your paper application. You also have letters of recommendations. You also have experiences in the, for example, your clerkship. If you go and do an elective at certain programs, they've worked with you. So that also plays into it as well. Research would play into that as well, extracurricular activities. So it's a well-rounded application. And then based on all of that, plus your interview, you would rank your preferences. The programs also rank their preferences.
Oh, so do they rank after the interview?
After.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they choose, not everyone who applies gets an interview.
Okay. That's similar to the UK.
Yeah. And then when you interview, the program then ranks you. After you do all your interviews, you then rank the programs, and then an algorithm does the match.
So you can apply to several different places in the specialty that you want.
Exactly.
So in the UK, it's a national program. So you just make one application. You've got one shot.
Really?
Yeah, and then based on your score, you then rank where you might want to be, and then from that score, you either get it or you don't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also apply to multiple specialties if you want.
Okay.
So say you want to do, for example, anesthesia, but you also you're also interested in family medicine as well, or you want to back up your anesthesia application with a family medicine application. You can apply to as many programs as you want in anesthesia, but also apply to as many programs as you want in family medicine. And based on the interviews you get, you then rank, okay, I want to do anesthesia more or family medicine more, or mix and match.
Oh, okay. And so what are the sort of ratios to applying? So like I said, in the UK, we have a set number of jobs. So say, for example, for anaesthetists, there might be 500 jobs at core training level. So that's at the junior level. And you might have 2,000 applicants, but there's only 500 jobs. And then it's ranked, and then you get based on your score. But in your instance, it depends how many places you apply to. So if you apply to 50 places, does that increase your chances, or how does it work in terms of the ratios between?
Right. So in Canada, every program has a specific number of spots available or open for matching. So,
Okay.
for example, one program can have 6 spots for anesthesia. And in another city, another program could have 5 spots. And so um, there's a limited number of spots for the total number of applicants. And so if you have way more applicants than spots, then some applicants could potentially go unmatched. And that's one of the reasons why people apply to more than one specialty. So in case the specialty they want to apply to is very competitive and they don't get matched in that specialty, they can have a backup rather than going unmatched.
Unmatched. And what happens if you're unmatched?
Then there is a second iteration where going unmatched actually plays both ways. So applicants can go unmatched, but also programs can also not fill all their positions depending on how applicants rank them.
Okay.
And so the second iteration is where there's a published list of all
Leftovers.
exactly. And then the unmatched applicants can then either choose to apply to those programs or decide to stay unmatched and either do other things, work in more research, and improve their application for the next year if they want to go that route.
Can they still work as a doctor?
No.
No.
So you can't work as a licensed doctor if you haven't done your residency.
Oh, wow. So is this out of medical school that you would do this residency?
Yes. So this match process is happening in your final year of medical school.
So what happens to people who don't match?
Then that's a good question. So it's
Wow, I thought we had it bad in the UK.
so if you don't match and you try again and you still don't match, then there's it's a tough situation to be in. So you have to make a decision whether or not to keep going or to transition out of clinical medicine and maybe pursue other because you can use your MD degree in other ways as well. So maybe consulting or there's other paths.
To be fair, I absolutely 100% agree with that. I do believe that we can use our degrees for other things, but I also believe that having at least a little bit of clinical experience is what sort of formalizes the degree, right? You've done an MD. If you don't have a clinical experience, it kind of cheapens it a little bit. So having that experience is, to me, almost crucial, even if it's just the first 2 years and then you go into consulting, and because that's where you get your knowledge base. That's where you get the insider knowledge about medicine and how things operate. So that's crazy. I mean, because in the UK, at the moment, I mean, when you finish medical school, everyone will eventually get a job. It's almost unheard of for an F1. That's our intern, I think is the equivalent. Everyone will get an internship. But to get a specialty training post, which is similar to your residency post, that's where the bottleneck is, because there's a lot of competition at the moment. And so people are really working on their portfolios to try and make sure that they get that job. But if they don't get the job, they can still work as a doctor because they've done their year 1 and 2 post graduation. So they can work, they can locum in emergency departments or take up extra work, or even take a fixed job, like as a fellow job, clinical fellow job. They'll be junior, but they can still practice.
Right. So after medical school in the UK, you do a year or 2 of just general doctor.
Yeah, so you go through rotations. So you have to do a minimum of general surgery and a general medical specialty. And then outside of those 2 specialties, you can then choose based on what you have interest in. So some people might pick psychiatry or GP or obs and gynae or surgery, maybe have 2 blocks of surgery, or in my case, I did ITU as well. I did ITU, obs and gynae, sexual health. I did gastro for general medicine, general surgery, but colorectal surgery.
No orthopedics.
No orthopedics. But when I finished my F1 and F2, I was in a year in between going into specialty training. And so I was doing locums and I did cover orthopedic rota. Orthopedic junior job. Do you have a fracture? Yes. Do they not have a fracture? No.
We're a simple guy. Just a simple guy.
Okay.
Chill guy.
It's your guy. So, based on that, based on matching, who should we vote for, the UK or Canada? Where would you rather be?
I mean, the way you make it sound, it's like you have one shot in the UK where you apply for your specialty training, and if you don't get it, you then get put somewhere else, and that's it.
No, so if you don't get it, then you apply next year.
Or you're still working as a junior while you apply.
Yes. So you can apply. So say, for example, I wanted to apply so you can't really apply straight to orthopedics. You'll do like core surgical training. So you'll do 2 years of training, but you might have an interest in orthopedics and you would tailor it to orthopedics, but you probably have to do other surgeries as well. And so you would apply for core surgical training. And if you got it, great. If you didn't, you could apply to other things. Like you could apply to radiology at the same time. So I applied to radiology and anesthetics. I was lucky enough to get both jobs. And then I decided on anesthetics, which freed up the radiology job. So people do apply to multiple jobs. But if you don't get a specialty post, historically, it wasn't that big a deal because you could just apply next year and do what you want to do. Like you might get an orthopedic fellow job as a junior, join a department, work there for a year, build up some relationships, build up your orthopedic skills, build up your orthopedic portfolio with research, audits, and so on and so forth. And then you'd be in a better position to apply the following year.
Right.
Well, the problem in the UK at the moment is it's oversubscribed because everyone wants to get into specialty training now, and the posts are being reduced, which doesn't really make sense, but the posts available are being reduced with the number of people applying high. So portfolio careers or portfolio development is really important now, which is why I've actually done a separate video on getting a portfolio up to speed and uploading evidence in a way that the people who market can give you the best score. I actually mark.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I marked the national.
So you
for
one of the people who make the decision.
Yeah. So and the thing is, it sounds like you have free range, but you don't. It's quite specific what you can give marks for. And so when people upload stuff and they haven't really given you the evidence, it's really frustrating because you want to give them the marks, but they haven't uploaded it. So I do have a separate video on that, and I will probably put the link in this video or just have it at the end of this video for you to watch later. But yeah, going back to which is better.
I mean, I don't think one system is perfect. Both sound like they have their pros and cons. I don't know if I'll be able to pick one over the other, but it sounds like the UK training program is longer.
It's much. So how long is it in Canada?
So for orthopedics, like I said, you do 4 years undergrad, 4 years of medical school, and then your residency is 5 years.
So that's 4, 4, 5. That's 13 years. So we would do, 5 years of medical school at a minimum, but most people do 6. And then you would do 2 years as your houseman, or F1 and F2 is our foundation years. So that's 7 or 8. And then the training is 7 years. So that's, if that's 14 or 15 years. It's not too far off, but it is also 15 years.
Sounds like a lot when you think about it. But then when do you start that 5 years of medical school? Is that right out of secondary school?
Yeah, that's straight out. Well, you can do it straight out of secondary school or high school, and you can do it as a graduate. But most people do it as straight out of high school or secondary school. Okay. So, speaking about other things, in terms of the actual clinical work, how would you describe your training? What sort of things do you get to do? What things do you enjoy? What do you not like about the job?
As a surgical resident, you're generally busier than you would be after you finish your training.
So how many hours would you say you do a week as a resident?
It varies depending on the rotation you're on. Some rotations are busier than others. Historically, in orthopedics, trauma is usually the most busy service. So if you're on a trauma rotation, you could work anywhere from like 60 to 60 hours and up sometimes.
What's the maximum? What's the most amount of hours you've worked in a week?
I haven't tracked it,
Okay.
but there's been times where I'm on call on the weekend, and then I work the full week, and then I'm on call again the following weekend. And that happens not, I don't think it's intentional. I think it's probably because there was a lapse in the schedule. Maybe I wanted to cover for a co-resident
okay.
or someone
Okay.
who wasn't able to make their shift or something like that. But I don't think that's like the norm where you're working 10
10 days, 12 days straight. Okay. Yeah, so I think the most amount of days I worked straight was 12 days, because when I was a foundation doctor or straight out of medical school, we used to work, if you work the weekend, if you would work 5 days a week, and if you then you'd work the weekend and then you'd work the next 5 days. So that would be 12 days, and then you'd get the weekend after off and then come back for your normal 5 days. So that worked out as 12 days. But they've changed the rules now. I think in 2016, when there were some strikes and they changed the rules, I think the maximum number of days you can work in a row is 7. Don't quote me on that, but I definitely know that 12 days are no longer in the rota. Yeah. And in Europe, you have a European Working Time Directive. So your average hours, so you can work 60, 70 hours in a week, but then you'd probably get time off the following week, so that your average hours are no more than, let's say it's 56 or 58, something like that. But you can also opt out of that. So if you're a budding surgeon, most surgeons in the UK, I'm pretty sure it's the same in Canada, are very ambitious, want to get the numbers up, want to get the cases up. So you can opt out and work 70 hours, or do overtime, or if your case runs late and you finish at 6, you stay till 9. And obviously those hours, they won't be paid for or necessarily counted, but you get the experience.
Yeah. As a resident, I think there is a directive where you cannot work more than 8 hours in 1 week.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and that's balanced over the course of, I think, 4 weeks.
Okay,
So,
4-week period.
so if you maybe run just over 80 hours 1 week, you will probably not be over that the next week, so it averages out.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is.
Okay, so the other question I wanted to ask, the actual clinical work. So, for example, do you get called to the ward to like put in cannulas or prescribe medications, or what sort of clinical work do you actually do in Canada?
So by cannula, you mean like an IV?
Yeah.
Okay. So as a resident, we do prescribe medication.
Okay.
But we're not responsible for putting in IVs.
Okay.
Generally, our very helpful nurses help us with that.
I think Canada wins on that one versus the UK.
Yeah, we have very helpful nurses who are experts at putting in IVs. They also help with putting in Foley catheters as well.
Okay.
On the ward or on the floor. We're responsible for putting in the orders.
Okay.
So if a patient needs a certain medication or they need it fully put in, and we have to assess and then decide whether or not this is appropriate, and we put in order.
Okay. So, I mean, thinking about it now, like you do your clinical stuff, you work 60 hours, 50 hours sometimes. Would you say that we would call you a trainee, or to be fair, in the UK, we've changed our nomenclature to resident doctors. So we used to be called junior doctors. Not very junior if you've been working for 15 years, right? But if you're a resident, intern, you're not yet an attending or consultant in the UK, would you say that the pay is enough? Do you feel like you need to look for sources outside of medicine to supplement your income?
Yeah, I think as a resident, you can always earn more. But in Canada recently, they've actually increased the salary for residents.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they've increased our cover stipend. So every resident in Canada, or it's broken down by provinces. So different provinces have different pay structures. So I'll use Ontario for an example. Every resident in Ontario at the same level gets paid the same amount.
Okay.
So if you're PGY1, meaning first year resident, you'll get paid a certain amount, whether or not you live in the major city or you live in a smaller town.
Okay.
So regardless of the cost of living, everybody at the same level in one province gets the same amount. And then on top of that, you get call stipends. So if you're on call, you get a stipend. If you stay overnight, you get it's a higher stipend. If it's a weekend, it's a higher stipend. So surgical residents usually rack up those stipends because we're on call a lot more and we usually have to be in the hospital a lot more. So that supplements your income a little bit. But yeah, I would say overall, yes, residents definitely would
Need extra
do
housing.
with extra money. Yes.
Okay, and a quick question about that, because if you're living in somewhere like Toronto, which is a high cost of living city, you'll be paid the same as someone who doesn't live in Toronto.
From the government, yes.
But if you do on calls, which are in your rota, then you get paid more.
Yeah, but it's still the same. It's still the same like rates regardless of where you live.
Oh, okay.
So I think, for example, if you're on call overnight, you might get something around $200 for as a stipend.
So
That's it.
is that in your rota that okay, you're going to be on overnights next weekend, and so in your salary that month, they've added those overnights.
No, so when you are on call, the administrator would then indicate that okay, you were on call, and then pass it on to HR, who would then calculate the amount of call shifts you had in that pay period and then add it onto your paycheck.
Right. But then they know that already because they do the rota.
No, the route or the schedule, is that what you mean by rota?
Sorry, the schedule.
The schedule is made by each individual department. So it's the department will then submit the number of call shifts per resident to
And
whoever
that's different for each resident?
Yeah, so because some blocks I might not be on call as much, and some blocks I might be on call.
Okay.
Or even sometimes I might be on call this weekend and I didn't get called in, but someone else would be on call next weekend and will get called in. So his stipend will be higher than my stipend
Because he got called in.
So we track it, and then at the end of each pay period you can get extra.
And do you get paid on time?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like
okay, but a HR perspective, Canada wins then.
you get delays in your pay?
So HR in the UK is a bit different because, well, first of all, our rotas or schedules are different because they're pre-planned. So you know you're going to be on call. So your rota will have like the way it works is they'll put the rota out. This is what we need covered, and then they will calculate that for the whole 3 months or 6 months that you're here, you are doing 1 in 8 nights and less than 1 in 2 weekends.
Okay.
And then based on that, they will say you are then entitled to a 1 in 2 weekend bracket of supplementary income, 1 in 8 nights income, and then your core salary as well. So you have your core salary and then the 1 in 8, less than 1 in 2 weekends, and so on. And then you'll get your salary calculated on that. But it's pre-planned. It's not backdated.
So what happens if, say, you pick up a shift, or
so if you pick up a
switch
shift,
with somebody or something like that?
So if you switch with somebody, they have to pay you back in time. So if you want me to do your weekend, I have to do. You will have to do my weekend.
I see.
That there's no change to the.
There's no like, okay, I'm not able to take this shift. Someone is covering for me, and.
I mean, if you're not able to do it and I do it for you, then the only way you can pay me back is to do mine. No one's going to pay you extra.
Really?
You know, absolutely not. No way. So it's not shifts. It's like this is your job, right, and this is your work. If there's any extra shifts, maybe if someone is ill or there's a gap in the rota, then the department might say, "Oh, who can cover this? This is the rate," and then they pay you completely separate to your salary.
Okay.
But we do have a London weighting. So if you work in London, you get a uplift for working in London. It's really tiny. It doesn't really make much of a difference. It probably covers your travel to and from work, and that's it. but it is there. So maybe the UK wins on that one. I don't know.
I am not sure if, because I'm doing my residency in London, I don't know if Toronto has,
Oh, right, okay.
if I don't know if their program has any
Up this.
supplemental things for the residents. I'm not too sure. But from the government, everybody gets paid. Say, and you can see there's a website where you can see the amount everyone gets. So
I will put up how much Canadian residents earn. So, in terms of when you're doing a residency, obviously you're doing a lot of hours. Do doctors do anything else outside of clinical medicine to supplement their income, like, I don't know, research or medical writing or consulting? Or do they do anything like that?
as residents, some programs allow for moonlighting, meaning outside of your resident clinical duties, if you have the necessary qualifications, you can then work outside of your
Clinical?
yes clinical
okay.
work
All right.
and get paid from that. As surgical residents in my program, we don't do any moonlighting, but I know there's other programs, say for example, I think internal medicine, where you could cover maybe an ICU shift or like a traumatology shift, something like that, and
So-
then you get paid
Extra.
for that.
So we would call that a locum shift, and yeah, there are no restrictions on locums. We can locum in any program
Great.
in the UK. So there's a restriction on locuming.
Yeah, so for certain positions or certain shifts, you have to have some qualifications. For example, if it's a surgical ICU shift, probably have to have finished your or done a surgical ICU rotation for you to qualify to
Okay,
moonlight in that area.
because you haven't done the foundation
Exactly.
program, so actually you only know orthopedics because you haven't done.
If we don't do like a basic
So you've never done internal medicine,
in medical school, yes.
but not as a graduate.
No.
This is insane.
Well, in our schedule, in our program, we have one block where we do consult medicine. So because as orthopedics, we do consult medicine a lot.
Okay, what's consult medicine?
It's a service in our hospital where if you need an opinion from an internal medicine doctor, you then consult them and they give you an opinion. So for example, in orthopedics, common things we consult medicine for is like preoperative optimization, preoperative clearance for a patient with multiple comorbidities and medication management and things like that, or hyponatremia is a common one. If a patient has hyponatremia.
So I get to get this straight. You speak to the medics about medical problems for orthopedic surgery, and that is your experience of internal medicine.
Well, so we do consult medicine, and so one of our rotations or elected in junior as a junior orthopedic resident is to be on that consult medicine service, so we can hopefully learn a thing or two.
Oh, so you just go and pretty much just do a bit of work with the consulting.
Yeah.
So then when they're asking, so they'll be asking you the questions about hyponatremia.
Yeah, and so you learn a thing or two. Hopefully
you remember.
Yeah, and when you come back to ortho, you don't have to consult them as often, but that's on paper. We still consult them for every hyponatremia.
Oh my gosh. Okay, quick question. Can you read an ECG?
I can read the basics, so I can recognize a film.
Okay.
I can recognize a STEMI.
Okay, good. Wow, that's a pass. That's a pass. We in the UK we have a running joke that orthopedics don't know what an ECG is. But yeah, sorry guys. Yeah. So in terms of that then, if you can't do any moonlighting or locuming, do doctors find other creative ways to boost their income?
I mean, as a resident, I think it's difficult to do that. Number one, just because of the amount of hours you're working as a resident, but also because personally, you can go outside of medicine and pursue whatever venture you want to, but finding creative ways to get other income using your medical license as a resident is not really.
What about outside of that? So maybe investing or Do you just not get paid enough?
Yeah, so that's another thing. As a resident, it's like the funds are very tight.
Yeah.
And so there is, and a lot of residents do have some student loans too as well.
Okay,
and
that's
so
true.
um, paying down the student loans is really a priority, which in itself is like building your own net worth by paying down
By paying
by
down
paying
debt.
down your debt. And so I think that's usually the priority for a lot of residents, because for during medical school you're not really earning any money. And so as residents, this is usually your first time earning a steady source of income. Excuse me. And so and it's not like you're earning like crazy amounts of money as a resident. So the priority usually is being able to live comfortably and also be able to start paying down some of your student loan debt.
And what is the average student paying debt? Do you know?
I couldn't tell you. It's different for different people. For example, in Canada, you can be an international student in a medical school where you pay much more than a local student. And also for people like myself who went out of the country to do their medical school, the tuition is much higher
Okay.
as well.
So in the UK, the average debt now is probably about 6 figures, mostly because you spend 6 years in medical school, so you pay for each year, and then the living costs
Right.
of each year, people take loans for the living costs because you're also not earning much money. But yeah, I'm really interested in how it is when you come out of the other side. When you look at your attendings, is it a life that you look up to? Do you think that they're earning enough? Do you think that it's something to aspire to?
I mean, for one, I do enjoy orthopedics, so it's not something I'm doing out of just trying to make some money.
Of course, yeah.
And so I do see myself working in orthopedics after training, but I also see myself doing other things other than medicine once I'm done training. Once I have the bandwidth to explore other opportunities.
Okay, so you're looking at more of like the portfolio type career.
Exactly.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So hopefully different streams of income.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
I'm learning from Dr. Nix.
They tell us so far what other sources of income have you tried, and how
So
does that work?
during medical school, I used to tutor medical students.
Okay.
And so I did that during medical school, towards the end of my medical school. That's one thing I explored back then. I also personally had a website teaching foreign nationals how to apply for Canadian permanent residency by themselves without going through expensive immigration consultants.
Okay.
I explored that as well for a bit, so earned some money from that. I've also dabbled into e-commerce as well, doing some Amazon, FBA, things like that. And so I find these things interesting, and so I don't see myself stopping from exploring all these opportunities in the future, and especially when hopefully I have more time after residency and more income after residency to explore these. The typical teaching with doing stocks and ETFs and, just having a steady, almost automated type of thing where out of every paycheck you assign a portion of your income to investments. I do that as well. And then real estate is something that I would like to eventually potentially get myself more involved in as time goes on.
Okay. So I noticed from all the things that you mentioned that most of them are online and they're digital. So you don't physically have to be somewhere. Back in the day, if you were, in our parents' generations, being a doctor, you couldn't really do other jobs because you'd have to leave the hospital, you'd have to be there. But, if you're doing a digital course for people who want to come to Canada without spending a lot of money, you just pop it on YouTube. And if you're doing tutoring, you can do that virtually, and e-commerce as well, because you don't physically have to be there. So that's a running theme that I'm noticing amongst doctors as well, and other professionals, that actually the online digital spaces open up the world to other sources of income. And then even the investing is, again, it's digital. You have it in your pocket, you use a phone, and you can just do things digitally, whereas before you'd have to maybe call up a stockbroker or go physically to buy these things. So that's the trend that I'm noticing. You mentioned real estate and property, and I will be doing a video on real estate and property, because that is a hot topic, and also one that historically is one that can build long-term and generational wealth.
I also have a YouTube channel.
Okay, tell us about it.
Yeah, I started the YouTube channel after I matched into Canada as an international medical graduate. So the goal for my YouTube channel is to try and educate other people and give them support in going through the journey. A lot of people supported me getting to where I am today, and hoping to make the process easier for people that are coming behind me. So I post about the match process, and I intend to get back to posting more soon. A lot of people have been asking me to follow up on those videos, so I hope to provide a lot of value to international medical graduates, and potentially then expand my horizons to other I guess clientele.
What's the name of your YouTube channel?
It's just my name, so Olumide Olotu.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put that. I'll make sure I'll put that down below.
Sure. I'll be getting back to posting soon.
Okay, good. So yeah, like his YouTube channel, follow, share with anyone who wants to go to Canada. It seems like they do a lot of clinical work. They get paid all the time, which is great. And once they finish and once they qualify, they earn much more than we do in the UK. So if you want to move to Canada, this is your guy. And hopefully you have a better understanding of the Canadian system versus the UK system. If you've got any questions, write them below. We good to hear some perspectives. Are you from Canada? What do you think? Have you worked in the UK system and the Canadian system? Share your thoughts. And yeah, continue to subscribe. If you haven't liked this video, make sure you like it. A lot of you watch it and send me comments, but don't like the video. So make sure you like the video and make sure you follow to stay up to date. And I'll see you on the next video, which will hopefully be on real estate and property investing. Thanks.
Be sure to watch that one.
Thanks for coming on.
I'm happy to be here.
Okay, good.
Perfect.